Men's basketball falls to Oklahoma, women's basketball cruises to a victory against Tech, and we previewed the Super Bowl coming up in just a few short days. Don't go anywhere, this is College Press Box. Good evening and welcome to College Press Box. I'm your host, Jordan Geelhoed, and it is a pleasure to have you here with us. Let's kick off our show with UT Men's Hoops, who lost a heartbreaker against OU this past week. In the first half here, we had Matt Coleman, who hits the three to open us up. UT kept it pretty close in the first quarter, as here they push, and Greg Brown finishes with the right. They started off with an 11-0 11-0 scoring streak, but then OU retaliated with their own 13-0 scoring run as Texas went into some foul trouble, but still stayed in the fight, and it was 43-34 OU at the break, as here they got a pretty good jumper. And in the second half, Oklahoma pushed their lead to as much as 12 points in the second, as they capitalized off of some sloppy defensive play by Texas, but Kai Jones here finishing in traffic with the slam, attempted to rally UT's offense. And here again is Kai Jones as he dishes to Royce Ham, who finishes with the left. Jones made the most of his career-high playing time with an impressive turnaround jumper. Ready, set, bam. Nabbing a career-high in assists as well, including this one that went for 3 points. Matt Coleman gives the pass to Jones inside, who again, I'm just waiting for it. Ready, set, boom, slams it down. And it was Coleman again here with 40 seconds left on the clock, who drove and shaved the OU lead to 1 point. It came down to the last possession, but UT just couldn't land the rainbow pass. OU won this game 80-79. It was very close, but Texas fell to the Sooners. And now it is my pleasure to bring in our basketball analyst, Samantha Pearl, who will delve even further into this game. How are you doing tonight, Samantha?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing good. I'm excited to hear some analysis. All right. So what do you think went wrong for the Longhorns against OU? Do you think this was just a case of them being shorthanded due to COVID, or was it something bigger?
Well, I think COVID protocol had a huge effect on the team. Shaka Smart, Brock Cunningham, Courtney Ramey, and Jericho Sims were all out of the game, and this affected the second half. Matt Coleman fouled out within the final minutes of the game, and the offense didn't run as smoothly because of this. Blake Nevins made the final play of the game, missing the shot, and Elijah Harkless stole the ball. This is an example of why their endurance influenced the game, because the main players and Shaka Smart were out.
Yeah, that'll definitely affect you if you can't have your big players and your coach. I'm sure it would. All right. As we've seen, COVID has affected this team in a major way. We're just talking about that. How do you think these cancellations will affect the team going forward from this point on?
I think that it'll be a challenge for Texas since they've only played 14 games, and due to the absence of players and Shaka, they haven't been together for practices as much, and this impacts their teamwork. Texas wasn't able to play against Kentucky on Saturday, and there could have been an opportunity for growth. When you have the opportunity for growth, the Longhorns could have gained strength, making them more capable of handling the difficulty of a possible NCAA tournament experience.
Yeah, I think that missed game against Kentucky was a real missed opportunity for them. And as we said, they hadn't played a game in a number of days. It was something like 10 days. So, yeah, that'll definitely hurt them down the stretch. The next team Texas faces is Baylor, the number 2 ranked squad in the country, and they are good. What do you think is the best way for UT to prepare for this game?
Well, Jared Butler shoots 45% from 3 and is averaging 17 points per game. If the Longhorns can stop him, it increases their chances of winning immensely. The main key for Texas offensively is get Kai Jones involved. In the last game against Oklahoma, he had 15 points and 10 rebounds. A positive attribute for Texas will be their size advantage. Texas has good defense due to the aggressive presence and a high energy level. Baylor will not be used to this, and this can swing momentum in the Longhorns' favor. This game is a key point in determining the best team in the Big 12.
For sure. I certainly am excited to see it. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Samantha. When we come back, we'll be joined by our women's basketball analyst, Emme Basnett, to discuss UT's victory over Texas Tech. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to College Press Box, the premier sports show on the 40 acres. Now, let's dive into some women's basketball. This past Saturday, the Longhorns bested Texas Tech 72 to 53 in the Frank Erwin Center. Huge props has to be given to their swarming defense, which caused the Raiders to commit 19, count them, 19 turnovers and held All-American Vivian Gray scoreless for a large majority of the game. On the other side of the ball, Charlie Collier propelled UT's offense with 30 points and 19 boards, making this her 12th double-double of the season and her 6th consecutive. The Longhorns opened fast and never let up, posting a 20-point lead at the end of the first half and held on through the second half to secure the W. And now I am pleased to welcome our basketball analyst, Emme Basnett, to the show. How are you doing tonight? How are you feeling?
I am so good and super happy to be back on Press Box. It's been a minute, so I'm really excited to chat about some women's basketball.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. All right. So Texas is ranked 5th in the Big 12, but coming off their loss to Oklahoma State a couple days ago, what do you think went wrong in that game for the Longhorns?
I think there was a lot of factors in play here. First and most obviously, they were on the road for this one. They were away from home court, so obviously they had a disadvantage in that sense, and they were simply out-rebounded in that game, and it was so upsetting, but they were out-rebounded by the Cowboys over and over and over in a pretty nasty scoring percentage, with the Cowboys nearly doubling the numbers the Horns put up. And I think Vic Schaefer and his post-game presser sums it up pretty well by saying, no, baby, we're not hooping. As in, we have to have a plan going into games. This isn't just for fun. There has to be a plan. They have to execute that plan, and they have to continue to be consistent with that plan, even when they're on the road. And then they followed this game up with a pretty impressive performance against Tech, but I think it points to the inconsistency this team has when it's away.
Yeah, for sure. If you don't come in with a game plan, you have a tendency to get overwhelmed, and I think that might have been what happened against OSU. This is their second meeting with Tech, and in their second meeting, the Longhorns are able to avenge their prior loss. What do you think was different about this game for Texas this time around?
Yeah, this was a pretty important game for the Horns, especially like you were saying, to avenge their previous loss. I do want to praise the Horns for their performance in this at first, but I think the first time the two teams met, the Horns had one of their worst shooting nights of the season, which I think they were excited to prove the Raiders wrong. And they exceeded the expectations and kept the Raiders from scoring for at least 5 whole minutes. And that's all due to the defensive pressure, with also adding to that 19 forced turnovers, which just points to the defensive unit really putting up a fight. And they also contained their All-American player, Vivian Gray, which I think was super important for them this time around. And then Charlie Collier, of course, had another impeccable night with 30 points and 19 rebounds. But their MVP has to be their defensive anchors. The defensive plays in this game were just their anchor for winning. I do think this was a really important win for them, especially since they were avenging a loss. But I don't know how this team is going to hold up when they play against other people in conference play that are just a different caliber and they rank ahead of them. So as much as this one was important for the Horns, I don't know how much it says about them going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. I was really impressed with the defense. It was something that we hadn't seen initially, but they really came through in that previous game. Well, this team still has some tough opponents left in the season, especially the number 9 Baylor Bears. Man, the Bears are everywhere. What will the Horns have to do to win this game? Sorry.
Unfortunately, this is also an away game for the Horns, so that already puts them at a distinct disadvantage, and everyone is going to have to play well. I feel like the Lady Horns this season have relied a lot on Charlie Collier, which of course, why wouldn't you? She is very consistent, has impeccable stats this season, a very standout player, but Baylor will be prepared for that. They will be trying to shut her down. And they're going to have to shut down Baylor's opposing players and their All-American players, because that's what they did with Vivian Gray. But this isn't Vivian Gray and the Raiders anymore. This is a whole team of really high caliber players. So they're going to have to also, we really need to see the defense that the Horns put up against Tech ×2 for Baylor. But it's a different beast entirely. So the Horns haven't faced a team quite like Baylor yet. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think Oklahoma State was the only preview of them facing a team that could be a little bit similar to Baylor, but Baylor's still higher ranked than Oklahoma State. So they just have to continue to learn from their mistakes from Oklahoma State and start using players like Celeste Taylor and Kyra Lambert and really using them to make a lot of their plays, because they are going to shut down Collier. But it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I think that's going to be a really, really tough game.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your insight, Emmy. It is much appreciated. It's great to have you on. Don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we will have Marcus Risen preview the biggest football game of the year, the Super Bowl, here on College Press Box. Welcome back into College Press Box. We are so glad to have you here, and I certainly am glad to introduce our next guest, Marcus Risen. Marcus, it is hard to believe the Super Bowl is actually upon us. It is actually here just in a few days. I'm certainly anticipating it, as I know a lot of other people are as well. So tell us, what do we need to know going into this monster game between the Chiefs and the Bucs?
Thanks, Jordan. We did it, everyone. We got through the first COVID NFL season, and boy, was it a doozy. We had great performances, breakout players, and some franchises ruined, Texans, whatever. But we're not here to talk about the dumpster fires of the league. That could be an unhooked segment on its own. But we're here to talk about the two teams that do what the other 30 teams failed to do this year, make the Super Bowl. And we have two familiar faces to the big game, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. What a game we have in the Super Bowl this year. On one side, we have the GOAT of football, Tom Brady. And the other, we have a guy who could take his crown in the future, Patrick Mahomes. This is a matchup that most people wanted, as the clash between two of the greatest to ever do it is must-see TV, especially in this crazy time period we've had over the last year. So who has the edge? Tom or Patrick? Chiefs or Bucs? Kansas City or Tampa Bay? At first glance, it looks like the Chiefs have the obvious upper hand, having just won a Super Bowl last year and trying to be the first team to repeat since a man named Thomas Brady did it back in 2004 and 2005. Having one of the best offenses led by the best quarterback in the league and seemingly dominating every team that they come across, including the Buffalo Bills last week. Their offense is sixth in yards per game, sixth in points per game, first in yards per game, and third down conversions. Not too shabby. However, the Bucs are an interesting team, as their defense has been underrated this year, being eighth in points allowed, sixth in yards allowed, and tied for fifth in turnovers. Their defense is led by Devin White, Ndamukong Suh, and Jason Pierre-Paul, all of whom could have a field day next Sunday, considering that starting lineman Eric Fisher has been ruled out for the Super Bowl, a huge loss for KC. However, the Kansas City offense is nothing to mess with, and there's three guys that make that true. Enter Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce. Mahomes this year was a man on a mission, posting 38 touchdowns with just 6 interceptions, averaging 316 yards per game, first in the NFL. He's a lot of people's MVP so far, along with Aaron Rodgers, who lost to Tom Brady last week. Meanwhile, his weapons are absolutely loaded. Kelce is a man amongst boys when he plays, making defenders look like fourth graders trying to tackle him. And Tyreek Hill, a.k.a. the Cheetah, is the fastest guy in the game who humiliates his opponents every game with his blazing speed. That brings us to our next point. Hill and Kelce are going to be a problem, especially since it's been proven that Tampa cannot contain Tyreek Hill. As in Week 12 in a matchup between KC and Tampa, Tyreek Hill went off for 13 receptions, 269 yards, and 3 touchdowns, single-handedly winning some people fantasy games with 57.9 points. Not to mention Patrick Mahomes that game threw for 462 yards, 3 touchdowns, and had a 124.7 passer rating. Tom Brady in that same game had a respectful 345-yard and 3 touchdown game, but also threw 2 interceptions, and ended up losing 27-24 in a Super Bowl preview, as Tony Romo called it that day. Another thing about the Chiefs is that they're the master to come back. They proved it last week against the Bills when they were down by 9 in the first quarter and proceeded to blow them out. Even when they're down by 24 in the second quarter to my Houston Texans, they still managed to keep their composure and come back most of the time, in that case in literally 1 quarter. Speaking of people giving the Texans a hard time over the years, Tom Brady, age 43, has led his team to the Super Bowl for the 10th time. 10th. Let that sink in. He's been in the Super Bowl half the years I've been alive, pretty much. That's crazy. And the difference between this year and the others is obviously he's not wearing red, white, and blue this time, but also that he's going to be playing in his home stadium, something nobody has ever done. Yeah, it won't be as packed due to COVID restrictions, but the Bucs will be playing somewhere where comfortable. Tom's comfortable everywhere, but I expect him to be even more comfortable here. Speaking of the 43-year-old, it's not like he had a bad year this year. The six-time Pro Bowl champ boasted 40 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, a ratio most 25-year-old quarterbacks would dream of. He led his team to the second-best passing offense and third-best scoring team. So they can hang in there with KC in the scoring department. The man is just a legend. And this year he has a better supporting cast around him than he did in New England. He has Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown. He has the ammunition to destroy KC's defense, which wasn't their strong suit this year. Yeah, they have guys like the honey badger Tyrann Mathieu and Chris Jones, but the team is a middle of the pack defensively. But still went off for 16 interceptions this year, which was tied for fifth in the league. Their offense combined with their good offensive line and underrated running game, Tampa could shock people in this game by scoring pretty easily against a defense that people don't really pay attention to due to the amount of attention that their offense brings. Let's go back to that Week 12 meeting, where the Chiefs beat the Bucs 27-24 in an entertaining game that proved to be the future Super Bowl. As I mentioned, Mahomes and Hill played great that game, posting monster stats. While Brady played well, but his interceptions really hurt his team, as they only lost by 3, and his interceptions could have been the difference between them winning. Let's talk about the other guys who could have big games. Tyrann Mathieu and Bashaud Breeland each got an interception against Brady in the game, proving to be capable of picking off the GOAT. On offense, Kelce had 8 catches but only 82 yards, but no touchdowns. But this is because of the huge load Tyreek Hill took on. Speaking of Hill, the guy who allowed Tyreek to go off that game was Sean Murphy-Bunting, and if history repeats itself, we could be looking at another huge game from Hill. The running game was weak for the Chiefs, but in their defense, they didn't need to be strong. On the Bucs side, their running game wasn't much better, but Ronald Jones II led the game with 66 yards. Now, receiving was a huge strength for this game. Gronk had a monster game with 6 catches and 106 yards. Chris Godwin had a quietly good game with 8 catches for 97 yards. And Mike Evans only had 50 yards, but had 2 huge touchdowns. And that's kind of been his role for the team this year, just to catch touchdowns. Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul each had a sack for Tampa, and it could get even more this game with the absence of Eric Fisher. With that, I believe this game could be a lot closer than we thought. With KC having one of the best offenses and Tampa having one of the more balanced attacks with offense and defense, we could see a close game between the two legends. I don't know about everyone else, but this is a game I cannot wait to see. I'm not the best at predictions as shown on this show, but if I could guess, I've got to go with Kansas City. Just because Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback I've watched with my own 2 eyes. That and the fact that the Chiefs showed really no signs of losing to the Bills last week, while the Bucs could have lost to the Packers if it wasn't for a bad decision at the end of the game by Green Bay. My 12 years of watching football, I've never seen someone as dominant as Patrick Mahomes, so you can't really bet against him. Even though he will be going against someone everyone bets against every year, and this year especially, Tom Brady, who could have something to say about my prediction. Back to you, Jordan.
There, Marcus. The Bucs, I like their defense. I think that they were one of the main reasons they won at Green Bay a couple weeks ago. But the Chiefs' offense, I think, is quite frankly unstoppable. And so a repeat Lombardi trophy for Mahomes, Andy Reid, that whole squad seems pretty likely. But, I mean, they are facing Tom Brady, and you just got to look at the 6 rings on his finger to know what he can do during the Super Bowl. Anyway, thank you so much, Marcus, for coming on. I saw that we had a bit of parallel thought with the Michael Jordan jerseys. I'm pointing the wrong way. But, yeah. Anyway, stick around because when we come back, we'll get into all kinds of Longhorn sports. Welcome back. Great to have you all back. And now we will cover some more notable events that happened with UT sports teams these past few days. Let's start with the 2021 Senior Bowl, which was held this past weekend in Mobile, Alabama. And with COVID restrictions, it held even more significance than normal in terms of pro recruiting. UT's quarterback Sam Ehlinger only played the first quarter for the national team, but he did end up tallying 42 yards and a touchdown on 10 pass attempts in that period. Taquan Graham, who's another UT product, recorded 2 tackles and a sack on A&M's quarterback Kellen Mond. The national team went on to win 27-24, and both men will look to get selected in the NFL draft this spring. Going to softball, the number 6 ranked UT softball program released their schedule for the 2021 season. Out of their 52 games, 23 of them will be against ranked teams, and 5 of those will be ranked in the top 10. They got a pretty challenging few matchups. Thankfully, they'll only have to leave Texas 4 times with road trips to Baton Rouge, Lafayette, Ames, and of course, Norman. This challenging schedule will kick off on February 11th right here in Austin. This past weekend, UT men's tennis finished a 4-3 comeback victory against Arizona State. Wins came from junior Chi Kai Huang, freshman Micah Braswell, sophomore Elliott Spazzeri, and sophomore Cleve Harper. Arizona State won the first match of the day, but UT rallied and came through with 4 straight victories to clinch 4 straight matches and the ultimate win. The Longhorns are currently number 4 in the nation and return to the court this weekend for a doubleheader versus Incarnate Word and Texas A&M Corpus Christi. And in Norman, Oklahoma, the UT women's tennis team pulled off another 4-3 victory over OU. In a back-and-forth battle, Texas's wins were scored by Anna Tirati, Charlotte Chavatipone, Lulu Sun, and Peyton Stearns, as well as doubles partners Ferranda Labagnara and Anna Tirati. UT's women's team remains undefeated at 5-0 and will look to continue their winning streak down the road in Stillwater for the ITA National Team Indoor Championships, the big time. And now to conclude our show, let's go through this week in Longhorn sports, starting with Tuesday evening, which showcases the much-anticipated men's basketball showdown versus an elite Baylor squad on ESPN. I will certainly be watching that one. Women's ball plays the very next day up in Norman to face off against Oklahoma. Man, Oklahoma is just everywhere in this episode. I guess that's bound to happen. And Saturday is jam-packed with both basketball teams playing, men's at OSU and women's versus West Virginia right here in Austin. Texas tennis also looks to continue their hot streak, as I just said, against UIW and A&MCC, so be sure to tune into those. Well, that'll do it for me. I would just like to thank my analysts one more time, Samantha, Emme, and Marcus, for coming on and helping me out here, as well as everyone behind the scenes. Be sure to tune into College Crossfire Wednesday, as well as the One and No Sports Show on Friday. And for everyone here in the studio in Master Control, I'm Jordan Geelhoed. Thank you for watching, and good night.